for time's sake, we'll go ahead and get started. And you can tell all your friends that didn't make it that this recording will be put up later. And the idea, just to kind of introduce, I feel like we've all met a little bit briefly, and I've seen your names on plenty of rosters, but I'm Laurel Oldershaw. I'm the head coach of YCC Swing Vote this year. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm really excited about this essentially weekly mental training, because our goal is whatever happens with the season and next season, we're able just to hit it right away with our mental toughness out of the way. And that can be some of the biggest factors between middle of the pack teams and top tier teams. And so this is really, how do we establish ourselves as a top tier program even while we are off the field? So to kind of give an overview of what's going to happen on these sessions at 10 a.m. on Saturdays is we'll go through a variety of mental game skills and practices with the idea to give you something to take away from this that you can work on individually, and also that you can work on and bring to your teammates. So there'll be a combination of tasks and asks for yourself, as well as tasks and asks for you and a couple friends, aka buddy groups. But we're going to let you all be adults and choose your own buddy group. So on that sense, I will pass the mic to Joe. He'll get started on goal setting.
Hi, just to reintroduce myself, I'm Joe. I'm one of the assistant coaches for Swing Vote this year, and I'm just excited to get started. Okay, so I'll present now. Cool. And just to make sure, can everybody see the tab that I'm presenting? It should be the Swing Vote goal setting. Yeah. Cool. Sweet. All right. So first off, thank you everyone who's here this morning. I know 10 o'clock is not the best time necessarily for a meeting, but thanks for everyone to come out. So first off, I know you're seeing Swing Vote goal setting with Swing Vote, but this is a presentation on how to set better goals as it pertains to Ultimate. But please, if you have any questions as it comes up, please feel free to put it in the chat, and I'll get to them as best I can in the moment or at the end of the presentation. So first off, before we dive into anything else, I want to talk about why we set goals. So basically, when we set goals, we ask why first, because it'll help us craft better goals overall. So understanding why we do those things before we dive into actually doing it is a good way to just kind of flesh out ideas. So first off, why do we set them? Okay, so to help us achieve things, right? Great. So, sorry. To help us achieve things, right? So everybody in life wants to do something, whether it's, I want to walk a mile today. If it's for Ultimate, I want to throw a backhand today, whatever it is. Goals help us define those things better, and then actually put to words to paper as to what we have to do to achieve those goals. Finally, why else do goals help? Because they motivate us. And finally, they give us personal reasons, right? So, like, we can think about our lives and ourselves in terms of why we want to achieve something, and we can think about what goes on in life and what goes on in Ultimate, and we can take those things and put them towards a goal. So if everybody wants to take a few seconds now and to think about why they want to set a goal for themselves, what do they want to work on, and then we can move on to deciding what that goal should be. So take a few seconds. Okay, so now moving on. Goal setting in Ultimate. So in Ultimate, there are, I'd say, two different ways to break down goal setting. There are player goals, and obviously both of those things feed into each other, but when you break them down, it's easier to understand what we can focus on, whether it's as a player or as a team. So, examples of player goals would be throwing, like improving distance on throws, making a team. So, in any situation, like whether that's making a high school team, going into college, or making a club team. And then finally, like stats, whether that be at a tournament, in a game, the number of Ds, or the amount of turnovers you have. It's good to want to track those things to see how you're better improving. Then moving on to team goals, there's on-field success, which is like qualifying for sectionals, regionals, nationals. And the reason I say sectionals is like, is your team even able to put together a team? Things like that. Next one is finishing in a certain place at a tournament, right? How do we define that? Like, do we want to come in second? Do we want to make the championship bracket? Like, how do we want to put words to how we want to be successful? Finally, there's winning a tournament. And I think that one pretty much speaks for itself. And then moving on from like on-field success, we have practice planning, which is like, okay, do we want to mark attendance? Do we want to see how many people show up? And then there's stats like, okay, let's track drops and turns. Let's track how many times in a mixed setting did women throw to women, did men throw to women, like things like that. How can we work to be better as a team? And then finally, there's mindset and attitude. So how do we as a team want to decide that we're all going to come together and work on our attitude on and off the field, our mindset that will make us better as a team? So let's like, our mindset and our attitude is fun. It's competitiveness. It's resiliency. Whatever you want to make it, it can happen. All right. Now, what makes a good goal? So when you are creating a goal for yourself, it's important to make sure the goal itself is achievable among other things. So this is a template I like to call, or what people like to call SMART goals, which is it lays out an acronym for you to use so that you can rate your goal and you know it's going to work. So the first one, S, is it a specific goal? What's the exact thing that you want to achieve? Or are you able, don't just say win, say like what it is you want to win. So if I can say, okay, I want to go into the season and I just want to win, it's not going to work. I'd have to say like, okay, I want to go into the season and I want to win every game in championship bracket. Make it specific, right? Okay. Is it measurable? Is there a way to tell whether or not you're able to successfully complete this goal? Okay. Or are you trending towards completing it? What do you have to do to achieve it? So if you want to add like 10 yards on your backhand, well, you're going to have to measure out 10 yards and see how far you're completing those throws, right? It's like it has to be specific in that way. Finally, be honest with yourself. Is it achievable? What will it take? So I can go out and tell myself, I want to run a 4-minute mile next week. Guess what? That's not happening, right? I have to work towards it, and it's not going to happen in next week. That takes like years of training. So can you achieve your goal? Be realistic. Be honest with yourself. Finally, relevant. In this case, what does it have to do with Ultimate? Like, I like doing other things outside of Ultimate. Cooking, okay, can be relevant. Maybe if you want to work on your like diet. Gardening, not so much, right? So you have to find those things, work on them, make sure they're all relevant. How will it help you accomplish something that has to do with your goal? Okay, and finally, when will you do this goal by? Be specific. Don't be afraid to give yourself time, especially if it's going to be a process, right? So I want to put 10 yards on my backhand. Let's return to that. That's not going to happen overnight, right? That's going to take some training. That's going to take some practice. So give yourself a reasonable time. Don't be worried to push it back if you have to. Okay. Finally, now we're finally to start thinking about like, okay, we have these good goals in mind, but how do we craft those goals to really achieve what we want to achieve? So I should tell you that there are two types of goals. There's an outcome goal and a process goal. And the process goal, basically, I'll actually tell you outcome first. The outcome goal is the target of the goal is the ultimate desired outcome. Meaning, like, if I am on a team and our ultimate goal is to make nationals by the end of the season, then that's my ultimate goal. Everything else we do within that is a process goal. And they're like little check marks we can check off as we go down it. So the target of a process goal is any action or process that will lead to the outcome. So using the example on the screen, if I want to throw 50 backhands every day until August 10th, I'll achieve the outcome goal, maybe, of I want to put 10 yards on my backhand by August 10th. So I say 10th or 18th, doesn't matter. Okay. So you see how one feeds into the other. So now think about an outcome goal you would want to set for yourself. And I'd say with that outcome goal, think of all the other process goals that might go into it. So I want to improve my mile time. Okay, how do I do that? Well, first I have to know what my mile time is. So track my mile, right? Now, once I have my mile tracked, okay, I have my time to beat. So I have to set up a goal. I have to run faster than, let's say, 7 minutes and 26 seconds by the end of next week. Okay? Now I set that process goal. Okay, how do I achieve that process goal before it? Oh, I have to run every single day at 6 a.m., and you just keep getting more and more specific, because as you get more and more specific, it'll make it easier for you to accomplish bigger things, because you'll have these sense of small victories. So it's like, great, I ran a mile every day this week. Great. Next week, oh, look, my mile time is down. And then by the time you set to beat your original mile time in a month, it's down by a lot, and you can set another outcome goal, right? And you can keep improving and improving and improving. And I just want to say, like, all of this fits in to ultimate, right? Whether you're on a team and you guys want to make nationals for the first time, you're at YCCs and you say, we don't want to just make bracket play, we want to go to the semifinals. Whether you're in high school, it's like, I want to win states, everything like that. You can use it for team building. You can use it for building yourself up as a player, right? Improving your personal game, watching film. Like, what do I want to take away from this film? Or tell yourself, I'll have 3 to 5 takeaways after watching this film, and I want to incorporate these 3 things from these 3 players or this player into my game. Like, there's so many ways you can work with goal setting and outcomes that it really helps. So finally, I'm going to open up for any questions, and then I'll give you your homework assignment. Great. So does anyone have any questions? No? All right. It's okay. So the homework assignment for next time is that I want everyone to go home, and I'm sure you've already started thinking about this, but set a goal for yourself, whether it be an outcome goal, whether it be a team goal or a personal goal, whether that you want to make a team or whether you want to improve yourself as a player. Set an outcome goal and then think of the process goals that have to go into that outcome goal. Hopefully we'll have enough next time at the beginning to talk about some of the things we came up with. And it was very nice to meet you all. Hope you enjoyed the presentation.
All right, great. Thanks, Joe. All right, so I'm Will here. I'm going to put up a presentation on your screen. I'm glad to see you guys came out today. Bear with me while I deal with the technology side here. And I just wanted to start by saying, what Joe's saying about goal setting is probably one of the most basic things that a player needs to do to prepare for success. And having a definition and vision of what it means to be successful, what that will feel like, look like, is a good way for you actually to help keep your focus off of this outcome goals when it comes time to play and actually do some of the performance-based stuff. Can you guys see my screen right now? Can you see my presentation? Laurel and Asaka are the only two on my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see me? Great. Okay. Cool. So the focus on this next part that I'm going to be doing is on a couple aspects of things you can do to be prepared on tournament or game day. Knowing these things are good, but that's not enough. In order for them to work, they need to be implemented pretty regularly. And in the spirit of doing, it's important, as Joe was saying, to write down and keep track of your work, whether you use a notebook, computer file, or whatever. Make it real by writing it down. At this point, we don't have a practice to go to. Like, there's no, grass for you to set your cleats on, for you to go out and like be a part of the team. So it's important for you to have something, I think, real, and that might be a computer file or a journal. I don't know if you've seen Free Solo, right? That arguably one of the best, or probably the best climber in the world, keeps a journal, right? That should be telling of like how powerful this process is. And I will say personally, I use this for my triathlon training, even just to go back and look at times, be like, the last time I did this route, what was my time, to give me something to look for, to help me with some of those process goals. Really does help. Even if you never go back to look at it, there's something about writing it down that makes it real. All right, now.
Hey, Will, sorry to interrupt. Can you click over to your tab that has your slides on it?
Oh yeah, I can definitely do that. That'll make stuff way better.
Thank you.
Oh, look at that. See, technology.
And then, go to present if you can. Perfect.
Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. That's embarrassing. This is the slide that was supposed to be up the whole time that I was saying all that stuff. Okay. So, are you prepared for this? Is a pretty large question. Obviously, because you're here and working with us today, you're prepared. You want to be prepared, but it's good to break it up, this broad question up, into kind of like two different spaces. Okay, there's things that need to be done at practice, right? Okay, and then things you can do the day of a tournament. Our focus is going to be this, but first I kind of want to go over these so that we can kind of like know that these have to happen and then kind of put them out of our mind for now. So let's say, we at practice, we have been working on our system and we've prepared and practiced it. Okay, we're going to assume that that's happened the day of a tournament. We've practiced good playing habits. That's everything from pull plays to sideline behavior to making sure you don't travel on your hucks. Okay, you've conditioned your body to play. All right, and then you've developed a communication style, language, and problem solving. You've developed all those things throughout the season to make sure that you can rely on these big kind of foundational pieces as you kind of prepare yourself to play. You can be ready because you can feel ready because these things are ready to go. That is a huge assumption, okay? You cannot just skip that in real life, okay? For the purpose of like our 30-minute session here that we're about to do, we're going to skip those, but like on a real team, you can't just say, those happened. They actually have to happen. And that's up to you and your coaches and your teammates to make sure that they do. Sorry about that. Okay, which brings us to our focus today. To be prepared to play your best at a tournament, these are some things you're going to need to do. You're going to need to reduce your physical stress. You're going to have your routines, habits, and patterns in place, things that you do either before practice and before other games, okay, to help you kind of be in your ritual of getting ready to play. But these are going to be the two things we're focusing on today. Being able to process emotions so that you can stay focused on what you need to do, which is play. Some of the process goal stuff that Joe was talking about. And then we're going to get some practice in this visualization towards the end. Okay. All right. So there are a myriad of emotions that come on game day. They can be hope. They can be doubt. They can be boldness, nervousness, cockiness. However, whatever your emotion is, you need to get your conscious mind back on the task at hand, which is playing your best, right? And there's a simple formula for this. It's feel, acknowledge, and move on, all right? And we're going to kind of go through these 3 steps, okay? And you'll notice the first thing that I have up here is controllable versus uncontrollable, okay? We cannot control everything that happens to us or even how we feel, but we can control how we react. Keep that in mind as you kind of go through this, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to take something that's uncontrollable and get some sense of control over something that's going to help move your conscious mind back to playing your best. It's important to make it clear that we can't really control how we feel or when we feel, but we control how we react to those feelings. That's kind of the move on piece, is the how you react. Okay, we need to find a way to process or maybe even use that feeling instead of drowning in it or letting it take us away from the task at hand. So, for example, in our house, obviously there's a lot of emotions with COVID, right? And so I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and our 6-year-old is feeling really lonely. She's feeling really sad. She misses her school friends. She started kindergarten this year. She loves her teacher, and she doesn't really get to interact with her. So there's like a lot of stuff going on in our house. And yesterday we had this issue where she's sad, and that sadness manifested itself in anger. Okay, and acting angry like didn't help her get out of or deal with that sadness. It just exhausted her. And that's the kind of like situation that we're trying to avoid on game day. We don't want this emotion that we're currently having to manifest itself in a way that's counterproductive. Okay. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to start going down to this feel part of this process. Okay. One of the issues that my daughter has is she doesn't understand what she's feeling all the time. She's only 6, right? She's not able to kind of comprehend or identify what her body is doing, what her thoughts are doing, what she herself is, how she's behaving, and being able to identify that feeling of sadness. Okay, so think about a tournament or a test where you had a clear feeling that you could name. Naming and identifying that feeling is not always easy. And now you have the gift of hindsight, right? You can go back and you'd be like, this is what I was feeling at the time. On the day of a tournament, you don't always have that hindsight, or you don't have that hindsight. So it's important for you to get some self-reflection of your behavior and start to understand what certain feelings are for you, how they manifest themselves in you. In the moment, it might be hard to kind of name the feeling, okay? Can you think of a time that you had a feeling you could not name? Maybe it was new to you or presented itself in a way that you didn't expect it. That's why this first step can sometimes be tricky, right? Nervousness can like show itself as silliness, right? As I talked about, my daughter's sadness kind of showed itself in anger, okay? Next, you need to acknowledge that emotion and identify how it's affecting you. There are a couple of simple tricks. My favorite is simply using this statement. I am feeling hopeless because I have nothing to look forward to because everything is closed, right? By naming the feeling and like saying to yourself or maybe even somebody else how it's affecting you, it makes it real, it makes it concrete, right? You've pinpointed the problem, okay? You can even go in more depth about what is affecting you and how it is affecting you, but don't spend too much time. It's easy to get stuck on this merry-go-round in this step. Where you keep on tracking the same feelings, emotions over and over again. It can be really tough to get off the longer you go on. Sometimes you can't get off until you're exhausted, right? Which is obviously counterproductive on game day. So like if you're like, I'm sad and that's making me angry and that's making me tired and that's making me sad and that's making me angry and that's making me tired, you can see how that can become exhausting and how it's counterproductive when you have a game to play in the next 15 minutes or hour and a half or whatever it is. And so now we get to move on, okay? And so this is the action step, right? So you've, identified what you're feeling, you've acknowledged how it's affecting you, and now you're getting ready to get past it so that you can play your best. This could be as simple as just accepting whatever that is causing your emotion, or as in-depth as doing some physical activity or visualization. You can see a list of different ways to move on from your emotions and ways that match well with them. That's what's down here. So you can see there's emotion. I picked out anxiety, doubt, and feeling overwhelmed. And then these are some move on strategies that you can use in those situations. Some of these move on strategies work well with pretty much anything. Like visualization is actually pretty good for a lot of things, which is why I picked it to go over today. But whichever one you choose, you should help you put your focus back on controllables and preparing yourself to play. It doesn't mean that emotion or feeling will go away. And sometimes you really don't want that emotion to go away. It just shouldn't be front and center. It shouldn't be what you're focused on. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, like the emotions are kind of like controlling Riley, right? And so like anger is always there. And sometimes anger is telling Joy what to do, right? But you always want your conscious mind. You always want to be in control of how you are acting. And you want your focus to be correct. your focus shouldn't be on how angry you're feeling. Your focus should be on what do I need to move on to get through this to play my best. Before we move on to visualization, I want to just look at some of these strategies here. This one right here, accept that adversity will come, especially for people that are worriers. Like sometimes just accepting like, yeah, things are going to be hard and that's okay. Sometimes that's all that somebody needs to say to themselves to move on. Trust is kind of a key word here. There's and I think that we may or may not do something on this as one of our other talks or things that we do, but it doesn't come cheap. You have to do all of that work that I talked about at practice in order for this trust thing to actually work. And just say, I trust my team, I trust my coaches, I trust that we're going to be okay. I've seen this one, reviewing the game plan and system. I see players doing that together. They'll like find a buddy the day of and be like, okay, can we go over that marking set again? Or, hey, on this pull play, can you remind me the timing? They'll kind of go through that with a teammate. It can be done with pairs. Distraction. I've had players that read books like up to the minute that they are getting ready to like do their warm-up lap. They'll read a book, or if they start to feel a certain way during the warm-up, they'll go and they'll just distract themselves by standing on the edge of the field, not paying attention to anything else for about 3 to 5 minutes to distract themselves, to try to get themselves back on track. Controlled breathing is pretty simple. We're going to do visualization here in a second. Positive self-talk and conscious posture and stretching. There's been quite a few studies in sports psychology about these and just how simple they are and easy they are and how much they work. This conscious posturing, I will tell you that I did not believe in until I tried it myself. I have a problem when I get tired when I'm running that I start to hunch my shoulders. And even just before a run, taking 15 seconds to focus on make sure I keep up my posture and then reposturing myself to feel what it feels like to be straight up and down. 3 miles, 5 miles into my run, as soon as I start to feel myself hunch, I have that physical cue. Oh yeah, I got to work on my posture. I got to get my shoulders back. I'm telling you, positive self-talk and conscious posturing is like, it definitely works, even though it sounds so simple. And again, it does take practice. You have to do it. And then we'll go over routines, habits, patterns, and cueings. I guarantee you we'll do that in another one of our sessions. All right, so on to visualization. So get yourself ready to do this. I'm going to run you through a pretty general situation to practice some visualization. Here are some tips for success. Boredom, anxiety, doubt. If you're looking for mental practice, understanding and working through game plans, visualization can work for all of those. There's been some case studies of like POWs that were like big time sports people, and they're like spending years in like camps or like in locked away in prisons, and they like would use mental practice and visualization to not just like get them through the days of like boredom or like obviously like physical trialship, but also when they came back, they picked up their golf game pretty fast because even though they'd gone years without practicing physically, the mental practice did help them kind of like just maintain some of the tools they had, which I found pretty interesting. So mental visualization does work, especially if you're looking at mental practice now with our self-containment, our shelter in place. Mental practice is something you need to do to try to stay sharp. Whether you're talking about like team stuff, like, the handler moves here, or the cutter moves there, or even just picturing yourself doing backhands, it does work. All right. This is funny. Every time I coach high school kids, they always ask, do I really need to close my eyes? Can I keep them open? And can I keep them open? The answer is, it depends, right? If you're doing this because you're bored, yeah, you can probably keep your eyes open. That's not going to really make that much of a difference. But if what you're doing is really detail-oriented, I do encourage you to close your eyes, just to help reduce the other stimulus that you have around you, and help you use some of the picturing that we're going to be doing in our visualization here. I think it's good for you to actually like physically picture what's going to happen, and it's just harder to do that with your eyes open. All right. While we're doing our visualization, move slowly and pay attention to details. I'm going to pause for sometimes long periods of time. If you think you are done and I am still paused, try to find another relevant detail that you missed your first time around. Okay? And it might be something like, is it raining? Like, what is the weather? What is your position on the field? Okay? Or somebody else's position on the field? How does it feel physically in your knee to make that movement? Okay, stuff like that. And run through things slowly. And also move the camera angle and replay stuff, right? We have a tendency when we do visualization to either be first person, like I'm looking through my own eyes, or kind of like a camera, like you're watching it on TV, either like aerial view or sideline view. Try to move between those two. If you catch yourself stuck in one, or if you find yourself, we spent a lot of time here, I'm still waiting for a new cue, maybe change your camera angle. And then last but not least is this is not for fantasy or glory or what ifs, okay? This is not about like, oh, I'm going to picture myself catching, the world championship goal or whatever. This is about going through routines and stuff that you have practiced before and things that are familiar, okay? You want to see things how you've practiced them and how you've done them before, okay? That's the way you want this to work. All right, you guys ready to go? All right, let me get my visualization prompting here. All right, so this is going to be pretty open-ended because we don't have a system. Swing Vote doesn't have a roster, right? We don't have like a reset, which is the situation we're in that we've kind of planned out for you to do. So put yourself into whatever system you are most comfortable or have used most recently, okay? Do your best to follow the guidelines we just talked about, all right? The situation is the disc is trapped on the sideline and you look downfield and there is nothing that makes sense to you. You're looking downfield and you don't see anything that you have practiced before. You don't see anybody that looks open. Nothing makes sense to you. Okay? What did you see that didn't look right? Was that timing? How should the spacing have been? What should you have seen in spacing? Take a second to pick out defenders that you might not have noticed on your first peek. Now, all of that is still true as we move on, okay? So keep all those things that happen still happen. They are still there. Nothing has changed, okay? What is happening around you that is not in your direct attention? What are players doing behind the disc? Who can you depend on your team that has noticed the same thing as you? All right, now we're going to solve this problem, okay? Break down really quickly what has to happen next into 3 distinct steps. All right, step 1. What is the first thing you practice doing in this situation and picture yourself doing that first step? switch your camera angle to one of your teammates. What did they see you do? Now take a second to acknowledge what else happened on the field while you were doing that. What position should the cutters be headed to? How did their defenders follow or not follow? What did the mark change about how they were marking you? What do you do next? Picture yourself doing the second step. What do you see now that has changed from your initial vision or setup that didn't make sense? Things should be starting to make sense. What is starting to look and feel familiar? Feel the familiarity and take the reassurance that comes with that. Thank your teammates for being there for you and setting this up. How does this finish? Picture the third step. What needs to be done by you and your teammates to restart the offense into something more comfortable and familiar? So tie up any loose ends. You could maybe fast forward a little bit, 2 or 3 throws. All right. So, the way that visualization works for a lot of people is when you do it for different things, like this here is a little bit of like mental practice, right? Using this process before a game would be good if you were like having trouble visualizing the game plan or you're struggling with a certain pull play, okay, or something like that. This type of visualization here is not so good for like feelings of doubt, right? The way that you use your visualization needs to serve whatever function it is. And so, for example, it's not the day of a tournament, but one of the things that I do while I visualize as a coach is I actually draw. And I will have a series of drawings that I use to kind of track where players are and where I want defenders or offensive players to go as a supplement to the visualization. And so whatever form that the visualization takes on needs to serve whatever function you needed to serve. And again, this was a little bit more mental practice, maybe even for some boredom. But if you were going to if you were feeling like a sense of doubt, going into that slow might not be the way that you want to go. Right, which is going to move us into our buddy work here. So Joe gave you the assignment of a process or outcome-based goal, okay? And what I would like you to do at some point in the next week is find somebody to talk to. And I know that if you are anything like my friends and family or some of like my students whose journal entries I've been reading for their homework assignments, you're getting tired of talking about COVID. Right, like just the idea that having something else to talk about is a welcome change. Here are some some things that you can discuss that are frisbee oriented, and then can also help kind of build trust between teammates, which is easier said than done. And so pick one, or you can do all four if you like, of these situations, or of these topics. Do you have a default emotion on game day, and how do you deal with it? Is that working, or do you need something else? What do teammates and coaches do that is productive or counterproductive for your mental state on game day? How do you know you're ready to play? How do you know when you are not ready to play? Kind of just juxtifying those two positions. And then, do you think the visualization works for you, or is there another strategy that you prefer to use in those when you get those kind of emotions that we've been talking about? Now, I'm a little bit stuck here technology-wise. You're going to have to bear with me. Assume you're looking at my, like, behind-the-scenes screen here, right? And I need to figure out how to get out of screen share mode. I have a tab open.
It should be down below by where you mute or show your video.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. This should be it. There we go. All right. So, do you guys have any questions, comments, suggestions about maybe not even just visualization, but about any other move-on strategies? I know we focused on the visualization for the move-on, but are there any other like emotions you've been struggling with, or you have routinely on game day, and you're looking for move-on strategies, or any comments about ones that do or don't work? We got a little bit of time here to kind of open it up for discussion.
Have you all talked about mistake rituals?
Hey, Chris, I saw you unmuted. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just had like a quick question that I know has happened to me before. Like, if you're trying to do self-talk and then it just like feels fake, you should just do it anyways.
Yeah, and so if it feels fake, then most likely you're not doing it enough. Do you know who Sean Keegan is? Okay, so Sean Keegan is the one that really kind of got me on board with like the positive self-talk and like the posturing. He had done like a lot of reading and a lot of work on it himself. And Sean is a very confident young man. He is extremely confident, even borders on cocky a lot of the times. And I think that one of the things that I've learned from him in this is that if it feels real to you, you're more likely to keep on doing it. And I think it felt natural to him to do. I think that like just like his demeanor, and like it came very natural for him to kind of say that he is the best and to say that he is capable. So it fit him better from a start. If it were me in that situation, I can tell when I'm being phony on my positive self-talk, when it's not paired with the right emotion. Right? If I'm doubting myself, I do better using a different strategy. And so maybe you want to do that. If positive self-talk feels phony, then you might want to pick something else, like just accepting that adversity will come, right? And then Strat was talking about mistake rituals, right? Mistake cueing. So like if it's happening after like you turf a disc, or if there's some specific event it's tied to, you might just have to do some practicing on the acceptance, right? I accepted it, the turnover happened, and now I need to move on. But yeah, I definitely am with you with like the positive self-talk doesn't always feel real. It doesn't always feel honest. In which case, maybe practice a little more, embellish a little less. Like, don't have it be like bravado. Have it just be, yes, I can do this, or something simple like that. But positive self-talk can look a lot of different ways. It can be a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be, I am the world champion and you can't stop me. It can be something just like, I can get through this. I'm struggling right now, but I can get through this.
I want to also comment on that while we kind of wait for more questions. I know one thing for me as a player, as I've changed, has been this changing of self-talk, or what I'm telling myself and focusing on. So I don't have the same naivete or pure gung-ho like optimism that I had going against a game. My first time ever playing Molly Brown, right? I don't have that same surprise feeling. And so I've had to adjust how I talk to myself when I play Molly Brown. I know these matchups, right? Versus I know these players. And I think that changes over time, and that's really powerful when you have buddies to talk to, because in some ways it's like, hey, like, you feeling good about this Claire Chastain matchup? And it'll be like, yeah, I feel great, but like, I don't really believe it when I say that because it's my first time, versus, oh yeah, I've played Claire twice, I've watched our games, I know exactly what her movement goal is, I have a backup plan for how I'm going to cut her off for backhand rounds, and having particularly teammates. And this is kind of the benefit of having a team year over year, is you get to work with those folks who then know your triggers, know your process, and are really able to support that kind of movement from step A to step B to step C, maybe back to B. Because I think we also, with mental game side, forget that it's not just a constant upwards trajectory sometimes.
And Laurel actually just totally reminded me that with the teammate stuff, like sometimes if positive self-talk like internally isn't working for you, I've had players that have found a teammate that they just feel more confident when they stand by them, and they will find proximity on the sideline. I've had players that will just put their arm around another player's shoulder, and that makes them feel more confident. And again, that kind of goes back to that trust piece that I put in with asterisks. That's built. That's not something that just comes up. Like, that's something you have to really kind of nurture and grow and garden, as Joe said earlier, really needs to be done beforehand, and that you're really relying on that at practice stuff to make that positive self-talk or those relationships actually provide stability in those situations.
Awesome. And I'll say one more thing, which is just some of the biggest, advice I've ever gotten on working out has been from Kelly Johnson of Seattle Riot, who basically said motivation is BS, but habits are really what get you through. And I believe partly about motivation, just because there's nothing more exciting to me than working for a team. But everything she says around habits, can you build those habits, is absolutely critical. Because at the end of the day, even if you don't want to wake up at 6, you have worked into your body, into your routine to reach this goal, and this habit is how you're going to get there. And so we'll be talking about habits throughout these weekly times on Saturday. Next week, we're going to have some surprise guests from the mixed division to talk a little bit more about their specific habits. So if you have any questions that you might want to ask someone with world level talent and experience, please shoot us an email. I guess the easiest way in Strat, or my co-coaches can remind me what the YCC swing vote email is.
U20mixed at WAFC.org.
Perfect. So go ahead and email us there. We will figure out the password by the end of the day so we can actually access that email. But if you're thinking of stuff throughout the week, if you have any specific questions around mental game that you want to learn, also reach out to us there. We'll be posting these videos and just quick little recap notes under them. But want to make sure this is really helpful to you all, because, I mean, us coaches, we can dive into this for our personal journeys, but, our summer plans are really to support you. So if you have any questions or anything, just let us know.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.